This has been an experience of amazement to me.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out. All right. Good morning and welcome back to Insights and Straight Talk. As you know, I am Rodd Duff, and today I've done something I'm not entirely sure was a really good idea, because for the last 20 months, I've been the one sitting right here, asking the questions, talking with candidates, leaders, people stepping forward, trying to understand what actually makes a town work, not in theory, but in real life, right here in Mangum. Well, through things like the 13 voices of Mangum, through voices at the table, through building out what we've been calling the Mangum 2030 Rural Revitalization Initiative. And of course, there's the School Regeneration Project. I've been listening a lot. And if you listen long enough, something starts to happen. You stop hearing just opinions and you start seeing patterns. What's working, what's not, and where people are aligned and where they're not even close. And somewhere along the way, a question starts showing up. A question started showing up more and more. Okay, you talk to everybody else. What about you? Now, that's easy to dodge for a while. but not forever, especially when you've got a guy like Barron waiting in the wings, because Barron doesn't just let things sit, he pushes. He asks the questions behind the question. And just to make it even a little more interesting, we don't always see the world in the same way. So today, I've handed him the show, which means for the first time, I'm not the host. I'm the one in the chair. And somewhere in this conversation, we're going to get to the real answer. Not a polished one, not a campaign one, a real one. About why, after everything I've seen, everything I've heard, I've decided to step forward and run for city commissioner right here in Mangum. So if you've ever wondered what happens when the guy asking the questions finally has to answer them, well, you know what? You're about ready to find out. Let's get into it. Hey, brother, how you be?
Hey, how you doing, Rod?
I am peachy keen. Is an old favorite saying of mine. I throw that out. Very, very peachy keen I am. So, Barron, you and I have known each other quite a while. And I thought about this for a while when I actually signed up for it. God, what was that, a month ago or so now? Who has got that counter edge and has the ability to push back on ideas and yet still hold everything true. You're a creative person. I like to call a creative, right? I consider myself that. Why don't we let everybody kind of know what you're all about, what's your history? I know you got a project coming up, and I think we're going to talk a lot about it on the next show, but please mention that also here today as everybody's starting to come in and just kind of give them a little bit about who you are. So when you're beating me up, they know why.
Yeah, I only beat you up because I disagree with you so much, Rod. That's just
there is that. We had a rather interesting conversation about 3 days ago along that line. Yeah. So tell me about, okay, by the way, Baron von Merkva, right? M-R-K.
Yeah, yeah.
Did I say that right?
Merkva. Yeah,
Merkva.
The Czechs aren't big on consonants. Or
That's true.
Vowels.
That-
Yeah.
Well, that is true. Yes, correct. So fill in the people as they're coming in. They're getting their own coffee ready. They're kind of settling in a little bit here. Why don't you let them know a little bit about the person that's good? There you go. You got your coffee going. I'm doing the water thing here. Why don't you let them know what you're all about? And let's see how we can kind of kick the show off a little bit. Got a couple of people just kind of sneaking in right now. Why don't you hit it?
Okay. Yeah. A bit about me. I've been in marketing and advertising for most of my professional career, and I'm sort of semi-retired. Still have to work, but I've gotten into video in a big way over the last like 10 years. And I just the through thread for all of the things that I've done, creatively, has been that I just love telling stories. When I was in marketing, I would often pitch campaigns that had some kind of a narrative theme or something like that. So being in video to me is like the ultimate storytelling medium. And
Absolutely.
so I'm far from mastering a number of the aspects of it, but I like it all. I like writing, I like shooting, I like directing, I like editing, I like sound design, I like doing my meager special effects. I like every aspect of it.
I like your special effects. I've seen it. As a matter of fact, the video project you're working on right now is the first. It's kind of a philosophy and asking the question and building your philosophy behind it, something along that line. I've seen the first one already. Is that correct? Did they call that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a content creator, trying to establish myself as somebody that has something to say, like like you, right? And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I do a variety of short form videos, and I do kind of a series called Fundamentals, and it's kind of a it's not humorous, but it takes a light look at some of the big issues that come up. So it's snarky philosophy is how I would describe it.
Oh man, I love that. I love that. So how long have you been doing that aspect right there?
I probably started doing something like that close to 10 years ago, when I, started off with do you remember those little flip phones? They were, yeah, we're not,
I know what you're talking about, but
Yeah,
referring to that action. Yeah.
it was called a flip camera, and it was just a very small one. So I, gradually built up equipment and whatnot over the years, and completely fell in love with the entire process. Like, even if I wasn't trying to, make something of a living out of it, like a second career for me as a video producer, as opposed to, copywriter, graphic designer, sometime cartoonist, that kind of thing.
So what was I going to ask you? Damn it. I could not. I can't for the life of me think about it, but I'm sure I'll remember it a little bit down the road. Why don't you? So as I put the opening, here I am. I'm being host right now. I got to shut up.
Yeah.
And I got to just. There it is. There it is. Make it. Why don't you kick me off of the mic or off the chair, however you want to call it. Holy cow, we got 100 people in. Since they're here. Actually, well over 100. But why don't you take the show over, and I'll try and behave as best as I can. As best as I can.
Yeah, that'll happen.
We both know what you mean by that, brother.
All right. Well, Rodd, I'm going to ask you very fair questions concerning your run for city commissioner.
Correct.
That's the job. And one of the first questions I had right off the bat is, what does that entail? I am not clear about what a city commissioner actually does in a town like Mangum. So if you could inform me a little bit about what you do, that's going to inform what questions I may wind up asking you.
Makes perfect sense, because that's a question I asked a lot in the first elections that I started doing for people that were running for city commissioner, and it was always interesting. So there's 3 city commissioners in Mangum. And then there's a mayor, and then there's, a couple other positions on the city council. And then there's also commissioners, county commissioners, and they both do the same things for different land masses. Does that make sense? So the city,
different parts of
the county, the city, what I mean by land masses. And what commissioners do is they address projects that are needed in the town, like things like you got to get the water pipes fixed, or we need the roads done. Certain, each project that commissioner identifies, and then works with the city manager to go back and forth on that, creating that budget. If it can be a budget that we can do, we're not gonna build a 4-lane highway in Mangum. One, it doesn't make sense, but we don't have the money for that. Right? It's a highway that costs $1 million a mile. It's actually more than that now, but it costs $1 million a mile for every mile of freeway. It's $1 million, and that's not in a Mangum style budget. I mean, fiscal budget. So. What I would be doing is working with the other commissioners on different projects within the town that are needed. The commissioners for the county did the same thing, but for the whole county.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that makes me think of something else. Or who is it that makes final decisions on what kinds of things get approved or not? Is it a collective? Is it a democratic process, or does it fall on one person who needs to make the final call? How does that work?
That's a really interesting question, and I say that because we live in Mangum, and Mangum is one of 7 charter cities left. In other words, a charter city has written its own rules.
Right.
Now, it has to follow certain state requirements, but the city can say, we want to operate this way or that way. So from my understanding, and please bear with me on a little bit of the vagueness and lack of depth in the answer that I'm going to give, because I'm not inside of the system at all. I've talked to them all, and I've got a handbook.
Well, you didn't say you had a handbook.
I got my handbook for running for what my duties and laws are, but it doesn't get into specifics. So how I'm going to answer that is, up till now, the final decision has been made by the city commission, by the city manager, but what happens and how that comes about is always behind closed doors, and then they come out and read we motion, anybody motion this and then they vote, and it's accepted or denied depending on what that vote is, right?
Okay,
so that's the vague answer that I know. Go ahead. Sorry.
So, sorry to interrupt. But so that aspect of it, as far as
my God, there's 500 people on. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that aspect of the decision making, it is a majority rule kind of situation. Like,
Yes, and
you couldn't
there's
have
no
one person in the commission say everybody else wants this, but I don't. So
it's not going to happen, kind of
So
thing.
it's not
No,
That's
it's the other way, right? That you said
Sure.
originally. There's 3 people in the commission, and if 2 of them vote yes, the other one maybe next time, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think we're a small town, very very small town, as you know. So I think I'm going to be really interested to find out. Oh, by the way, we're already getting questions here. You can read these as we go along. They'll be helping you, I think. Mangum changed perspective on leader. Oh, there's some really good questions on here. But anyway, what I was saying is, us being a small town, I think it's almost like an association. And I don't mean to insult Mangum, but I think there's a lot of people just kind of go along more than. This is what I've seen. I've only been a citizen, so I sit back and in the back row and listen to them. So I just see some patterns. But I'm assuming that in the back, when they have their closed part of the session, they'll leave for discussion purposes, and in that time, that there is some sort of debate, which I never have gotten to see. So I'm assuming that I'm right in what I just said, but not necessarily. There may be some pretty good debate, healthy debate going on in the back rooms. And so anyway, as a matter of fact, the position I'm running for now was vacated by somebody who came out of those meetings and said, nah, I'm done with this. So maybe I'm wrong about that, but it's fairly Democrat, right? 3 votes yes, 2 votes yes, 1 no, 2 votes no, all 3 no. But all I've seen is typically is when they come out, it's all pretty unanimous. I don't think I've ever seen anybody say, I disagree with it. Well, the so-and-so still passes on a vote of 2 to 1 kind of thing. That's what I've seen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The question up on the screen, what key moment made you decide to run for city commissioner? It was something very similar. I was going to ask you about what was there something, because I mean, you're a big city boy, right?
Yeah, I know.
Mostly. How do we know you're not a carpetbagger?
Huh? And I come from Chicago, where that term comes from, where originated, I should say. I am a big city boy, and as you know, I grew up in a military family. I'm honored that my dad served, and actually the youngest boy that I raised, Barbie's youngest, Matt, is in the Army now. I grew up Marines. My dad was a Marine, and so I've lived all over the world, literally all over the world, and within that, I've always lived in big. I think the smallest city I ever lived in was about 50,000 people. Which was a small city. But it was surrounded, and you couldn't tell where the cities, like here, when I go out to the end of Mangum, I've got fields and mountains for 30 miles in every direction. So when the city ends. Where I've come from, California, this better than anybody. You fly over into LAX, and you can't see any land. It's one on top of the other. So I've always lived in big cities. And then when I started this show, and for a number of other reasons, including that my kids live now they've left California and here to Texas. So I'm closer to my grandkids and all that. So that was part of it. But so when I was building my machinery, I'm going to make this a longer answer than I thought it was. When I was building my machinery business, I would come into an area to drive out to a factory, go see customers or pitch something, right? A project or whatever. I would drive through little towns, and I started after a while. You get bored. I mean, you may come in flying and drive for 3 hours to go see somebody, right? because they're not in the middle of the city. They're, out here. And so, or 2 hours or whatever. But on that trip, you would not always be in the freeway. You'd take the side street and go towards whatever. You'd follow your GPS, and all of a sudden I go through these little towns. Even in Chicago, when I headed south, I'd always wonder, you'd see people, and it's a town of 800, or it's a town of 3,000, or it's a town of 8, or that's an extreme. But I always wondered how the people were. What did they think? What was it like? And so that always sat underneath what the final reason why I chose to do this. The show is about middle America, the great middle class, one conversation at a time, right? And I forgot to say that in my opening monologue. Sorry about that, dude. This show started to get some footing. We had nothing basically. When we did our first shows together, I think we had, I think we had a few hundred people, or a decent amount of people on, but I think we only had like 5,000, 3,000 subscribers to the YouTube channel. But as I started to get into these conversations, I realized, I can't be a big city dude talking about rural America, talking about middle America. I need to be honest and authentic about that. So actually, producer Barbie and I, 8 months ago, well, it was more than 8 months ago. 8 months ago, I moved here. But about a year ago, we started talking, and so we started doing research all along Texas, the border of Texas, what towns, so the decision came out of the show and curiosity and being as authentic as I can. Does that make sense? Did I answer it, or did I just answer around?
Yeah. You could have been a lot shorter in what you said, but
that's a rarity, man. That's what do you think the show lasts for a couple hours long? It's not because our guests. I feel a lot of hot air out there. 500 people on, by the way. So
no, but I mean, it also reminds. I get that you're really you wanted to live the lifestyle of the people you were trying to empower. So and I was just curious. I suspect, I don't know this for sure, but I would think that part of the reason also was the small town lifestyle, the simpler, less noisy, less chaotic kind of environment to do what you're doing now. Has that had a big impact on you? Do you feel like just generally more calm and connected?
So moving here, that wasn't actually thought that you're bringing a deeper point into why I moved here. But since I've come here, you're absolutely right. And on top of it, we're in the South here. So there's that Southern hospitality, Southern charm. Love their accents out here. It's like living in Kentucky in that aspect. But yes, the world does slow down. I'll give you an example. When I first moved here, I had signed up for a gym here, and I was going into the gym. I was actually walking across the street, and one of the sub-sheriffs, or the sub-sheriff, the second in charge, there's the sheriff of Greer County, and then a sub-sheriff. He lives in the property that attaches back to mine in the back there. And his dogs, my dogs have become friends and all that. But when I first came here, one of the first times I'd only met him like once or twice before that. But I was crossing the street, Little Street, Lincoln, and he was on Oklahoma, the intersection, and he was driving across, and I see him and I wave at him. He waves back, And so I continued, like in a big city, right? You wave at somebody or your neighbor and you just keep going, right? No. I learned really quick what you just brought up. So that sheriff had pulled in behind me in the parking lot and drove up, and I like 10 seconds later, I hear this, and I turn around, it was him, and he's waving me over. We sat there and bullshitted for like 10, 15 minutes. That's all he wanted to do. Hey, Rodd, how you doing? What's going on today? You know, would you ever see that in Chicago or LA when people are passing each other in the street? I mean, there may be a certain instance, but is that common?
It's certainly not as common for sure, but I mean, I think like you, I have found that when you engage people, you know, they'll engage back for the most part. But most people are kind of, you're right. In big cities, it's kind of the idea that, you know, everybody's got their own thing, so just kind of, you know, you don't have noise, casual on the street get together and start talking to somebody because there's, you know, lots of people around. But it does happen, and I have found, particularly in grocery stores, I love poking people in grocery stores. I mean, you know,
you're going to get a bad rep for that. You're going to have to you don't watch out.
You know, I like having fun with people, and I'm pretty much unanimously, people respond to that and they re-engage. Once in a while, you get somebody go, "Oh yeah, look at this guy, yeah, long-haired hippie freak," you know. But most people really, they are looking for interaction, and a lot of times they just don't know when it's appropriate to do it, you know.
Yeah, well, out here that all of that doesn't apply. I mean, I after that for a little bit, I was kind of getting nervous because everywhere I go, people wave at you. Like if they're driving by, you get waves all the time, and you're waving back, and you said it does happen in big cities, but there's so much noise and there's so much hustle and there's so much hurry, and like you said, so much about your own things, and that it's people here are more interested in you than what they're doing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And it's a constant reminder of what is slowing down, stripping out back the noise a little bit, and you slow down just enough to be able to listen or want to listen. And that's the biggest difference that I've seen about being in a small town.
Yeah. This is somewhat off on a tangent, but that was one of the things that I noticed during COVID, which was, you know, not what you'd ask for.
A lot of bad things about
a societal experience.
Hey, Baron, let me jump in a little bit. Okay. That COVID was a bad thing, but some good stuff came out of it. And I assume
that was the point I was trying to make. Is it did get people to kind of stop and slow down, and it gave you a chance to kind of reevaluate what you were doing. I found that to be a pretty common experience for people, despite the masks and the all the crap that went down. That people were aware that there was a good side to having to go through that, So I think for a lot of people, it wasn't just all bad. It was horrible. I'm so glad it's over, which, we all are. We're glad we're over that. But there were things to be learned from that entire experience, which obviously we're still learning.
Yeah. And I think there's just so much more. The part you just described needs to be more than even it is today, which it is probably a little bit more than it is yesterday, but needs to be more than it is currently. I just wanted to say thank you, Adam, for that comment about moving into a big city or into a small city. And then he also asked this question here. Do you mind reading that?
Yeah, kind of a variation on that. What inspired you to finally step into the candidate role? So
that's a variation off of what you originally asked me, isn't it?
Yeah, and the question before was there a
before that? Yes.
Yeah.
You were asking what candidates do and so forth, and we were kind of rolling into this when we jumped into the what back up. Why are you in a small city? And then we'll go out to the commissioner part. What do you think of this? What Adam's asking. Thank you, Adam, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything more you wanted to say about what pushed you from thinking about running to throwing your hat in the ring? Was there anything that like pushed you over?
So the oh my God, I'm gonna open up some Mangum for you. I was asked to run, and I kept saying no. I don't want to. I don't need to run because there was that open, and a lot of people know what the show's about and what we're doing, and people have been on the show from here, so naturally they're like, hey, here's this dude. He's not homebred necessarily, but look at these ideas. He might be a valuable asset. But it's so much safer to be on this side of the table than on the other side. And because at some point when especially a small town, when you're a commissioner, or you're a mayor, or you're making decisions about things as city manager, you talked about the grocery store. Our grocery, we have one, and it's got like 7 aisles. You're going to see people that you're making decisions for, and you're going to have to step up to that.
They're going to say you.
Yeah, and now that's me. So I thought, it's much easier to do this than that. It's easier to throw, yell across the fence of what you should be doing. It's a lot harder to make that change happen and actually be part of that, making those decisions. So what I finally decided was, I can look at, like I said before, I can look what some of those things that I'm presenting or will be currently do, but officially presenting for support on. And I went through it, and somebody explained, a couple of people said, you know what you're doing is awesome, but imagine that process you being part of officially. You've got a lot more feedback and a lot more ability to maybe massage it and change it. I thought that was a really, really insightful idea or thought, and so that's where I made the decision.
Good. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that.
Hey, by the way, Barry, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna throw these up every now. Take them when you want, and we'll go to the next one whenever you want. If it works within what you're
it actually
about.
Does. It
Okay.
actually does. Yeah. Check
Okay.
this out.
All right.
Yeah. How has Mangum changed your perspective on leadership? Which something that I wanted to probe with you a little bit, the question of leadership. But I was going to put it in the context of, solutions in a small town, being able to scale that, to bigger cities. And in my opinion, it's less about the system and it's more about the core intention, and that involves leadership. How do everybody's on the same page about we want to improve life for Mangum or anywhere else.
Sure.
And, but there's different ideas about how to do that. Those are things to be figured out. If there's not agreement and unity on the intention of what you're doing, then to me, it gets more difficult. It can fray. The original intention can fray if people don't keep reminding themselves, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this?
Good point. So do I come back to this? By the way, eventually, I love it when other podcasts come on or shows come on. I mean, I love that. How has Mangum changed my perspective on leadership? And then with that, you were building on that. How do you want me? What is it that you want me to respond to?
Oh, just since you have lived most of your life in larger cities and have been exposed to that for most of your life, as have I.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, I think you have more of an opportunity in a smaller environment.
There you go.
To actually project that leadership, whereas it could be just, kind of covered up, or, you're one tiny speck in a much, much bigger pond. So it's hard to maintain, that kind of leadership. So have you even thought about that aspect? Because to me, you're a bit of you have some natural leadership abilities. And now that you're actually running for an office, does that change anyway your ideas about how to be a leader now that you actually may be one?
You son of a bitch. You had to turn that into a tough question. Damn it. See what I mean, guys? Remember I told you, this guy.
No softballs.
Yeah, no softballs. All right. So, yes, the ability to be heard is dramatically different, right? If I was doing this in Chicago, obviously I'd be one of a billion ants out there and without really a name. Here, you're able to project your ideas and have have people actually respond or listen or make decisions on those things, where if you were in the noise in a big town, obviously that's a much harder thing to do. And honestly, to be honest with you, I think the politics are more mature and have their own purposes that you have to work within. Making a change becomes multiple levels more difficult to get through in a big situation than in something like Mangum, where it's, okay, I heard you. Now it's like, okay, now we're in action. In a big city, I heard you, but I'm going to ignore you. You got to go through so much more. So, couple of point question here. Has Mangum changed my perspective? And it has, for those reasons. And it's kind of exciting to be able to just kind of step into something that you can see right away that there's an issue. In big cities, there's a billion issues. In a town of 3,000, there's focused issues. And one of them is financial. There's less money to do. They only spend what they have, right? You can't do what is done in other parts of the world and country in the budget system. So there's that challenge. There's offsets. We have less resources, less money, less ability to. I mean, there's no meeting spots. There's no places for people to get. So you could see pretty quickly some things that you might be able to have a positive effect for. And that puts you on a journey. And to me, being on a journey just empowers your whole life. If you're just running through the motions, doing the 9 to 5, and I mean, I see your eyes light up when you talk about your music editing, your editing in general, you're making the film, the directing, all that. That's a passion. That's a now with you starting this series, it's got to be at that next level higher. For me, I'm on a journey now. The show started this now, and even this show, it's kind of almost like a big. I mean, we have 1,500 people on, so you don't know exactly what you're affecting. It's going out there into space, right? And yeah, we get results. I mean, you get feedback, but here it's big. You're directly working with people about what is needed for those people. And what's exciting to me when I started, another inflection point is to be able to enact some stuff because people like the ideas. You know, you've got people that have lived here for generations. What was it? I was talking to a guy the other day. His family's lived in this town for 140 years. 140 years in this town. And he's not the only one, right? There's kind of a lot of that, right? There's people generations and generations. The early 13 Voices of Mangum brought some of that out. I was learning about it. It's interesting. So when somebody from a big town, let's say, with big experience, with lived experience that they didn't have, the biggest thing maybe in some people's lives, and this isn't everybody, but just in general, I'm broad brushing here, is when you go to OSU, you know, when you go to Oklahoma State, that's big city, you know, that's wow. You know, for me, that'd be, hey, let's go watch a football game. Cool. You know, it's a different experience that they're coming from, and to be able to bring that into a town is a really special feeling. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, another podcast. All right, go ahead. Sorry. Wow, there's a good number of questions here. There's not a huge amount, but and you know, you're asking the questions. So if you want to jump in on these or tuck them back, I'll just leave it here until
Sure.
we go on. But because I'm interested in your flogging of me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know that much about your whole 13 Voices of Mangum series, so that question doesn't have a lot of resonance for me personally, because
At
I
some
just
point
don't know
I'll
what
come back to it because it'll help me. I know all about it. At some point I'll come back to it. Go on with your question. Yeah, like I said, if you want to hit it now or say, hey, Rod, I don't know much about this one, take it. Ask the questions you want to ask too.
Yeah, well, again, is that something that you want to elaborate on?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
This is one of the reasons I'm running. As a matter of fact, that's you going back to one of the original inflection points of why I decided to run. Learning about this town. Okay. So when you're in a small town, especially in a small rural town, especially in the South, and correct me if you believe that I'm wrong at this statement, please interject. But I heard this a lot. You're not from here. You're an outsider, and that's not a racist or a bigotry or that's just we don't trust it. We've lived here our whole lives. How do you know us, right? I mean, that's a big city. I don't think anybody thinks that way. But
No,
here,
if I could interject right there, yeah,
please.
It goes both ways. If you live in a
Meaning?
big city and somebody from a small town comes in and goes, well, why don't you do this, this, and this? It's so simple. We'll look at them and go, yeah, you don't know what our experience is like. Yeah, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk more about the instinct to otherize people for any number of reasons. And that's what I like what you're doing in general is you're breaking down, some of that and listening to what different people with different life experiences are talking about. Right.
And yeah,
That's
absolutely. So the 13 Voices, that series, and it continues. I call it 13 Voices of Mangum, but it's really a whole. I don't see it stopping because of what you just said, and because of what the show is built on, and it's listening to people and putting a place for the conversation to happen, but also to learn about it. And while I'm learning about it, all of us that are watching are learning about that too. whether we agree with it or whether we disagree or we just don't know yet, all of it, that's what's supposed to happen. And so the 13 Voices to me did two things. When I started it,
can I stop you for a brief second? Because again, I don't know if everybody listening knows about this. I know you, and I still am not real clear. Could you just real quickly, what is the 13 Voices of Mangum series? Describe that for me.
You know the term "man on the street"?
Hmm?
Interview man on the street kind of thing.
Sure.
So what we started about, I think it's four or 5 months ago. We started that as a series of basically this, but people coming on. Wow, we've already been going 45 minutes. Holy cow, that went fast. Didn't that go fast, or is it just me?
Yeah, I mean, coffee's cold.
And 1,000 people are on. The series is basically, it started out, and it's expanding now, but it started out just taking a number of voices, people who live in this town, for them to come on and tell us what is their history. What are these families? It started fascinating me that people have lived in this town for generations and generations and generations. As a matter of fact, there's one lady here that's actually a descendant of Lincoln, from those days. So some really fascinating stuff that nobody would know about because they're in a small town. So these different aspects became a very big curiosity to me. And with that, I became a little bit more accepted in the town. So that's why I did it. But the voices are about these different families or these different, whatever that situation is, and giving them an hour and a half to talk about what built them to today to do what they do, and why are they still here, and why have they moved in, and that kind of stuff. That's what the Voices is. It's basically the show about Mangum.
Okay, good. Yeah, and that question, the biggest lesson from that, I think you described it a little bit, but that kind of dovetails with a question I had based on the people you've talked to and your experience so far. What do you see as some of the biggest issues in Mangum that need to be most changed or most improved? Have you started to see some things over and over again? It's like, we really gotta handle this thing. This is a priority issue. Have you come up with some of those as the biggest issues?
Now, when you say that, do you mean by a soft sense or a hard sense? Meaning issues being street care, or issues being living in a small town and not having opportunity? And where are you looking at that question from?
From the perspective of somebody who's running to make decisions in Mangum, what so far do you see are some of the biggest issues that you would most want to see improved?
Great question. I'm gonna go a couple of different things in ways in that. To me, I think the biggest, and this isn't just Mangum. A lot of what I talk about Mangum is, like you alluded to earlier, it's all across our country and the world, by extension, the world. There's a lot of things like, that Mangum used to be known as the Queen of the Southwest. Have you ever heard me say that in our conversations or anything?
Don't think
okay,
so.
So and the Southwest, right? That's Texas, that's New Mexico, that's Arizona, that's California, Oklahoma. So it was, at one time, in its beginning, it was known as the Queen of the Southwest. I think people have lost their identity. I wrote this in the column today that I always write it on the Friday before, so it'll go out next week. And I investigated this concept, people losing their identity, meaning a town losing its identity, and the people within it. I see this building back of maybe a little more pride in the town, where there's a lot of people kind of just giving up on it and going through the motions. I hear that as well. And that came from different conversations within the 13 voices. And I think the biggest thing this town needs is it needs to believe, because right now it lives off grants, right? State grants and small revenues. There's only a couple restaurants in town. There's only one grocery store. There's a couple of gas stations. And then there's now starting to be businesses coming into town. Well, one of the first things I heard one of the commissioners talk about is we need to present a picture so that people will want to come here. And that didn't exist for the whole time I was here. I learned that really wasn't something this town grabbed hold of. The importance of believing in the town itself, because they're just watching the small erosion, the slow erosion, right? So the change of that lens, change of the focus of that lens, I said soft and hard, right? To me, the soft one, that's probably the biggest issue that I see that Mangum needs to positively affect. And some of the hard things that Mangum needs, it does need infrastructure, physical infrastructure. You know, the power plant is 1950s. There's a rail station here, but it's only got a track left. The roads are not exactly in the best situation, and the water is got issues, and the sewers got issues, and they do a lot of patchwork because they're keeping with the budget. And, they're doing the responsible things, but if you mix the hard and the soft together, and why I said what I said the way I did, is because rural America Mangum has been looking at this with, okay, we only got this much. How do we get this? Yeah, we need more because we only have this much revenue from sales tax and stuff coming in. So that shift of focus, having the town start to get its agency back, you know what agency is, right? Yeah. Getting that back is in my belief, the fastest way for a town to start looking at these issues and realizing, okay, we need to get business in here. But they're all thinking about it from what they know. And there's so much more. You talk about big city, little people from small towns coming into big towns and the big town going, dude, take a seat, learn some stuff about us, and then maybe you can make an intelligent suggestion. A little nicer maybe or not. But what I see here is the vision hasn't been very broad. Yeah. Because it doesn't have the lived experience to be able to do that. And I think those things all together are the biggest thing that need to be addressed here.
Yeah, so it seems like it's mostly kind of an economic
Sure.
issue, and yeah, what you need to do,
and leadership needing to push forward on ideas that aren't, instead of what insanity. We talked about insanity the other day, right?
Insanity.
The definition is
doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Right. And I see the potential of that here. Again, I'm watching from the audience so far, so I don't know that, but I think leadership really could benefit well by expanding, and I'm not setting myself up here. I got all these ideas, so you guys need to change. That's not what I mean. I mean just
Sure.
that desire, that openness to say, we haven't done it that way, but tell me more. That's what I think is really important now.
Yeah, and it just made me think of this. You said this a charter city, charter
Correct.
town. Are you considered a town or a city?
No, a city. We're actually a city, but
yeah.
Very small city.
Is in developing these things. I mean, I'm assuming that there are short-term goals and longer-term goals for basically any city. So I was curious to see if, from what are there some existing longer term plans that have just wilted on the vine, or they're just perpetually put off? We'll figure it out next year or whatever. Is that your sense? Because there must be plans for growth, right?
And that is the actual best question that could ever be asked, and I have no idea. The decision, again, I'm in the audience still. I'm not on stage, so to speak. So I have asked those questions in general, but that's a good question. That obviously that's one of the first things that need to be determined if I step into a leadership role here, because one of the first things that a number of people have talked about is changing the charter. We need to get back into a little bit, because there's some stuff that also interferes with the ability for the city to move forward, and that's another one of these things that people have kind of given up, kind of just settled back into the shadows about, and saying, well, my vote isn't going to matter here. And that's everywhere. That is something that can be in everywhere. But this, and by the way, Mangum, we're the seat of the county. So all the sheriff are based out of here. All the school systems are based out of here. All the post office is based out of here. So it can't go away. So if it wasn't that, probably it may be even in the worst spot that it is. But there's so much more potential, and I can't wait to really be able to answer that question in a very deep sense, because that's the core of where Mangum's going. Do you have a vision? Is that vision, and that vision is this, and this, or not? So no, I don't know the exact answer, but my sense is, I don't know how much that's been a real light in the road, just as a path. I've never seen any indication that that's something they go by. I may be wrong. I'm in the audience.
Sure. Oh, yeah. This question, I like this question. How will you balance listening and decision making as a leader? Because I just had the thought while you were talking that, like in any city, not just small, big, in between, doesn't matter. This idea of having the people who live there invested in the vision, right? Like people uniting uniting behind at least a basic vision for improving, the life of everyone who lives there, your neighbor, right? If people kind of had that common vision and had, at least mostly being in agreement with that, I think that could make a huge difference. So I really like this question, balancing the listen and decision making, right? Like you have to listen to understand what the people of any given, community would like to see. And as a leader, at some point, you got to say, okay, here's where the rubber meets the road. It's not going to satisfy everybody, but here is a path. Here is a vision. Here is a set of results that we want to achieve. You know, and again, if you had the people in the town behind you in doing that, it seems like that would just have a dramatic effect on how effective any leader can be.
I couldn't agree with you more. 100%. And I think there's a lot of leadership that's going on now that isn't listening to their constituents,
Yeah.
you know, individual places. And I think that's a big part, and we talk about this. That's a big part of what's going wrong in certain parts of the country and the world. And to me, the listening part is without the listening, you should not have leadership. Well, it's not actually leadership. You're just doing your own thing. And that goes for a couple of ways. If you're listening to the people, and again, you may have different people wanting different things. And you may have somebody that says, yeah, I want that. And then his neighbor or her neighbor is saying, you crazy? I don't want that. So, you know, that's part of listening, right? That's the important part of leadership. And then on top of that, I've found that being curious about what they're saying tends to lead more so than not a direction of how to solve that issue. Because, you know, there's a lot of smart people that aren't running for office or that aren't in office. As a matter of fact, there's probably more smart people that are the constituents of a certain official or not.
They're smarter because they're not running for office. It's like, what are you, crazy?
Yeah, you know they're smart because they decided not to do it. Yeah, 100%. Listening is my dad taught me this once when I was very young. He said, son, he says, you have 2 ears and you have 1 mouth. Use them accordingly. And I did that throughout my sales career, and it built a really good sales career, business. And I always thought about that. I always tried to get people to talk about what they want because it was more interesting than what I thought. As I listen more to what they want or what they think, then I become more lived experience. I become more intelligent. And so because I'm pulling, I hate to keep referring back. What's the name of the series? The one of the achy body, the one I watched yesterday or day before yesterday. As we get older, we get these more creeps.
Yeah, this is getting old.
Is that what it's called?
That's the title. Yeah, it was about.
Okay,
that.
Yeah. So
misconceptions and
when you have that kind of approach where you think about things and then you have more confidence in listening to what more people want to say. And that kind of like the shampoo commercials, like Perel, and then so on, and then so on, and then so on. And those, remember that commercial?
Yeah, I was going, where are you going with this?
With the TV screen, it was so on.
And they'll tell their friends, and they'll tell their friends. Yeah,
that's right. And what happens then is you're in your show, you were talking about your hard drive when your kids, you know, about forgetting things, about memory loss. Your kids, you know, they don't have much to think about. But as we get older, we've got a whole life. I've got in June I'll be 64. I've got 64. Well, maybe not as a baby, but 64 years of gathering this information, and it's fascinating because 10 years ago I was nowhere near as comfortable in having an opinion because I didn't know that much. Not, in the last 10 years, I've learned a lot because of this show and asking these questions over and over and over again. So you build what's happening here, right? So listening is the most important part of making decisions in leadership roles for two reasons. One, you get smarter. Well, three reasons. Now I messed myself up. One, two, you also get to understand what is actually needed.
Yeah.
And three, you make better decisions because you have more experience. You have more data. You have more of that data you were talking about in the getting old thing. So yeah, it's huge. It's absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Great question, Matt. Thank you.
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. And just to put a cap on that, I think we talked about this before, is, you cannot have communication without the speaker and the listener. You just cannot. You'll have one person talking and the other person doing whatever,
Right.
So
yeah.
It's
It'll
incumbent.
probably end up being like this, in one ear and out the other, right?
And to me, it seems like one of the distinctions with leadership is that you're accountable for when you speak, that you're being listened to, right? So if you can clearly see that they're not listening to you, right? It's your responsibility.
You said that to me a couple times.
To change how you speak, to try to connect so that you can have a listener and have real communication.
And you know what's important about what you just said is communication is also multifaceted, right? It's not just the words, right? So how can I understand? And your point is fascinating. It's awesome. It's right on, and you knew that. But when you're talking, you're trying to teach somebody something, or you're trying to convince somebody, more important, convince somebody of something. Listening to their response or lack of, or seeing their facial expressions and leaning in, or okay, all right, that I'm being extreme there, but you can't have a communication without that. And it's my responsibility as the one trying to convince you of something, or right, it's my responsibility to see how my audience, again, back to sales, man. How is my audience taking that information? Are they leaning? Are they interested? Or are they just kind of like, okay, I can't wait till it's over or done with that? Right? So it's huge. I agree with you.
Yeah. And I don't know, the small comfort in that is that if somebody isn't hearing what you're trying to convey, it's not personal. It's got nothing to do with you. It's not because you're a bad speaker, So if that makes things any easier for somebody who's trying to get better at being persuasive or communicating their ideas to other people. Because, right, I mean, I consider both of us, reasonably fluent in communicating, but right, all the time, well, everybody encounters somebody who, for whatever reason, is just not on the wavelength, not receiving it. So that's always the time to go time out. What am I not saying that is having that person check out?
Well, and you're not doing them a service at all if you're not doing that. I mean, because
exactly, you're just barking at howling at the moon.
Yeah, well, and you're at best wasting their time and your own, honestly. And that's at best. And you may be doing harm. You may be doing, and I think there's a great point here. I'm just thinking about something. There's not enough people that actually do that. There's not enough people that have enough awareness. At least from my experience, maybe I'm wrong, maybe 99% of the people are excellent communicators and pay attention to how they're affecting somebody else in their decisions of continuing to affect them at that point. But I've started to kind of in my life notice patterns in that I don't believe. I wish there was more people that paid attention to the aspect you just made, because I don't think enough people do. I think our whole society would be 1,000% better if people, when they're trying to when they're trying to convince somebody of something, right now it's just about winning an argument. But when you're curious about something, you watch that reaction and you say, okay, this isn't going well. And then, so what's the easiest way? Okay, I'm obviously missing a point or issue or whatever. So I have always asked. So what do you think? What am I missing? I even on the show all the time say, does that make sense? That's an important question. That's a huge question. I don't think enough people not even don't say it, just don't even think about asking it or saying it. You agree with that?
Absolutely. There's I think most people have an amazing ability to communicate, but I think what stops a lot of people is the sense that it's just not going to matter. It's not going to make any difference, right? Like it isn't going to matter if I'm going to, change that person on the left or that person on the right. If I change their mind, or I think there's just kind of an overall sense that isn't really going to matter. And that's a real shame, obviously.
It's horrible.
Yeah, but if more and more people just kind of kept that in mind, the next time you have a conversation with somebody, be a little self-aware and see
a lot self-aware.
See if you're being listened to, before you continue your effort to change somebody's mind. Well, that's a very right. Like that's one of the most generous things people can do, is to listen to somebody else. It's such an act of generosity, and it has nothing but upside.
You know what concerns me about what you just said, what you described, which is a truity. One, I think people don't think they're going to be able to change somebody else's mind, so they don't try. And two, you also can be kind of afraid of being embarrassed if you don't have, about being completely wrong or sounding stupid, or somebody asking you a gotcha question that you got. So there's that. And my issue with what you said, not with what you said, but the fact that what you said is 100% correct. My issue with the fact that that's 100% correct is that today's social media and news, mainstream news, and even the people you see that are doing stuff like me here, or like us here on non-traditional media, or news. What do they call it? Legacy media. This is long talking. But what I see so much now, and you talked about politics. What I see so much now is it's all about gotcha moments. They're having a No Kings rally, and so all the conservative, extreme conservatives that want gotcha points. There's a number of them out there. They get clicks, and the other way around. That's what you see, but that's not what happens around the dinner table or on the back porch in my neighborhood. It's you can talk to somebody there. The everything coming out seems to be, I got to win this argument or I'm going to be embarrassed. And like political on main news thing, if they don't hit the answer right, then they're a fool, and we're all standing back and judging them. That's why I think we need more of this stuff, so we can, for another reason, so we can practice having you disagree totally with what I'm saying, but it's still okay. I mean, but okay, so tell me more. What did I miss? Or what did you miss? You're asking me, what did I miss? Or I'm asking you, what did I miss? And that's I'm going to use a safe space. That's a safe space that we all should live in, because the more we shut down and quiet down and are convinced that no matter what I bring up isn't going to change somebody's mind. I told you this the other day. I live by this. When was the last time you were curious about something enough to be willing to change your mind? Or I say change your mind, but at least be willing to change your mind. We need to practice that more, and that's a big deal.
Yeah. I think, the more and more people who were comfortable about expressing their ideas, even if they're not confident about their position and they don't have it all, worked out or, put together or whatnot. If they felt safe enough, if they knew they were being listened to, I think it just make a huge difference in, the general discord. But, it's real easy to default to just like, I'm going to defend my position and you're going to defend
or
yours.
leave, or just leave in anger.
It goes nowhere. It just simply goes nowhere. And one of the things that I really admire about your whole movement, can we call it a movement?
No, absolutely. I call it a movement. Hell yeah. Call it a movement every second you want.
Just like driving home this notion of being curious, being genuinely curious about things. I mean, we've talked before about it. I'm a big fan of science fiction because the more universal term for science fiction is speculative fiction.
Ooh.
The what if?
Yeah.
What if this, with no, preconceived notions or anything else? It's like, a story idea will delve into what if we were able to go faster than light, or what if we were able to, et cetera, et cetera. So that, for me, I'm very grateful that I got into science fiction, because it kept me curious about how things work. And you're very curious, genuinely curious about things.
Very much so. Yeah.
So that's the fastest way to not get hardened into your beliefs and your ideology, is to remain curious, to be willing to say, you know what, I don't know.
And that
be
to be okay.
Completely honest, I don't know about that. This is what I feel about it. This is what I might think about it. But, to be completely transparent, I don't know what would be a good idea.
That's that is something that I think needs to just be practiced. And there had to be a time in this world that, I think it's interesting that we're talking about this, and we're kind of leaning a little bit into politics. I do want to hit Lady Law Films question before we get into a little bit more of that. But I can remember a time when people in the news started making there was maybe it's the 90s, I'm guessing. But when people stopped talking around the dinner, family, like you go to Thanksgiving, and that term started coming out. Don't ever, what are the two things you don't talk about? Politics and religion, right? And you know what? That's the thing we should be talking about the most, honestly, but with curiosity.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, right? Yeah, politics is an idea. It's not an ideology, and it has become an ideology for a lot of people, and that's where that wall hit, where you hit a hard wall when you're talking to somebody, or let's say there's two people that are talking, that their whole ideology is about the politics of their belief, right? When that happens, you're exactly right. You're not going to change either of their minds until they use my dad's rule. Mm-hmm. And that's it's all about winning an argument. Told him Trump's the beast, or Trump's the best. I won. That's what it's all. That's the thing that it's about. And it started, I can remember that was never, I think it was about when I was a teenager. So it had to be even before the 90s probably. But that's where people started not wanting to talk around the dinner table about this or that. I mean, yeah, with your wife and all that, because you're probably going to be on the same page, or at least willing to check. You got to sleep with her tonight, so you're going to be curious. But like family members, there's entire families that are separated over politics. And what I mean by that is mom and dads aren't allowed to come over anymore, or the other way around, or whatever. And that's just, I mean, there's something that's more than we don't know about, because that's not natural. You know, humans are a social species, and we're being driven away from being social with each other.
I mean, I think that you know, that's kind of partly a human nature thing, because, you know, when you get down to it, it's not about the politics, right? Two people that like get estranged in a family over politics. No, it's not about politics. That politics is just the expression, right? It's deeper than that. There's some kind of break in the relationship, and a lot of people use politics as a way to justify, well, I'm on this side and you're on that side, right? Well, of course we can't communicate. We can't come together because they think this and I think that, you know. And that it's so true. You know, stepping back 30,000 feet, it's not about politics. That's my view anyway.
So when you say that, do you mean that the family has a fracture in something else, and then it just shows up when that it happened to show up because that's the new trend over the last 5 or 6 years, right?
Yeah, it's just the easiest way to identify. I don't like the way that person thinks versus I like the way that person thinks. You know, it's just a real convenient way to you know, justify not listening. To come full circle, right? Like we all do it, right? It's like very few of us are responsible for what comes out of our mouth. You know, we're just it's not like we're constantly spewing talking points or something like that. It's just that it always becomes a default when somebody says something that you don't disagree with. It's kind of a, you know, an instinctual reaction to go, hey, wait, I disagree with that. I strongly disagree with that. And here's why, you know, instead of being curious, instead of saying, oh, gee, I'm never going to communicate with that person because they believe like this. Instead of that, going, why do they think that way? You know, that's actually a very interesting question. You know, how could we be so far on opposite sides of an issue when I think most people generally recognize we're all in it together. We all basically want the same thing. We want happy, healthy families, and we want everybody to prosper, yada, 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 yada. You know, how does it get so polarized? And I think it's just a matter. I like that you use the word practice. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just a matter of practice. Just like, right, if you don't ever exercise, you know, you're not going to be as capable to do certain things. So if we're not being curious and really listening, then our capability to understand and communicate is obviously going to you know, wilt.
Diminish, yeah. And I know you and I disagree with this, but I think the media has a lot to do with that, and I believe on purpose and being driven by our government to do that, so that here's the deal. I built the show originally on bringing the great middle class together. One, you know, empowering the great middle class, one conversation at a time, right? That tagline. But what happens is we need to be together. Well, you said it the other day, we're basically a 50-50 country, and we probably always more or less will be, unless, traumatic stuff happens, but basically, and should be to a degree, because you want to move the middle. I mean, that's how politics has worked all this time. You move the middle, and so it's an issue. How do you solve it? One direction or the other, and it should be pretty much close to what everybody thinks, but maybe some people just lose this argument. But it's not, I shouldn't have said lose this argument. You know what I'm saying, though? It's very frustrating that we, as the great American middle class, the 7 million people that voted for this person or that person, is made up of that. I mean, there's very few elites in the world. There's more, but there's also people that are, under the poverty line, and that's basically the lower half of the middle class. So, but at the end of the day, the only way we're going to be able to get ourselves in better situations, the politicians aren't going to do it. That should be their purpose, but it's not. But it could be, because like you said the other day, we're the not only the problem, but we are the ones that make those decisions, and we make them by either voting for people or not voting for people. But at the same time, I believe that governments, all governments, and governments are there for a purpose. Yes, to take care of the basic structures of their society, but it's also kind of morphed into this power. I've got more power. I've got money. The personalities that are attracted to be a policeman are a certain type of personality. The personality that somebody wants to be a nurse, that's a certain type of personality. It drives them that way. Somebody who's an athlete, all that stuff. That wouldn't be a good example, but you know what I mean. The personalities go towards the careers at a basic rule where their personalities have driven them. And I think politicians are very much in that environment where, and yes, I also believe, like you do, that a lot of politicians, I'm not going to go all the way to say every one of them, but how I like to look at people is that they enter politics for a reason. Like, I'm entering quote unquote politics for a reason, because of the questions that are, you and the audience are listening, are asking. But then what happens is they start to get groomed. You're if you don't do it this way, you're not going to get on this House committee, and you're not going to have the influence to get what you want through. So you got to go this way, and so it starts to slowly erode. We talked about earlier the purpose that person had. Yeah, that starts to erode, and I believe that between the government and the media, I believe that there's a constant desire to keep us in little boxes: white, black, woman, man, on and on and on, religion, this, that, and that way we can't unite. It's our job to do that, because the founders set up a system that we should have the exact politicians that are doing the exact perfect work for this country. And we're never going to have that. They're going to drive the whole narrative on everything, because you and I are fucking beating the hell out of each other about stupid shit. And I like to call it those shiny objects. What I really hope what I really desire from this show to be, as it continues to evolve, is be a place where people say, I can listen to that dumbass Baron and learn some stuff. Or I should have said, I can listen to that dumbass Rodd.
Mr. Dumbass Baron to you.
Mr. Dumbass. and you guys all know what I really call him is Jesus. Look at, take a side view. Turn your head. Side view here. Look at this. This is Jesus. He's even got the hot halo going, man. But in all seriousness, I believe that it benefits the politicians when we don't come together. You're going to say something?
Yeah. you know, the effects of the media and political ecosystems are real apparent, but it's also not anything new, right?
No,
We
they're
just have
better.
a much bigger way to entrench that idea, you know. But I always caution people who are rightfully upset that politicians aren't really representing us and the media is not really giving us something that we actually want. It's just like, you know, snacks, you know. But the point I'm trying to make is that we're involved too. People
Mhm.
need to start being responsible for what they watch, what they listen to. Again, getting back to the whole thing about being curious. If you were genuinely curious about something, right? Say you're really your thing is the deficit. The deficit's, it's getting out of control. It's crazy. You know, that's my big bugaboo. If it's really something that you want to solve, then doesn't it make sense to find out more about what both sides think? You know, just so
We don't
if
want to
you're
do that.
genuinely interested in solving the problem, you need more information, not less. You know.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to what you were saying about I'm not going to be able to convince somebody, but a different way. People don't want to hear the other side because
Yeah.
it just infuriates them. They can't imagine how that could be true, and that dirty bastard whoever made that up.
But
They're
that's not
lying.
true.
No, it's not.
That's the big irony. It isn't true that when you hear an idea you don't agree with, that you know, it makes sense to just, you know, to tune it out, or you don't, right?
It's the least true of anything in the world.
Yeah. It's just it's a default. It's an instinctual thing. You know, somebody comes up and, you know, smacks you on the head. It's like, hey, you know, you want to punch them back, right? I mean, it's just
Right.
instinct. I do it, you know.
Yeah.
But it gets in the way of there being a benefit to either side. You know, that's the great irony, is we have so much to teach each other because we disagree.
You know what? I think this is a perfect place to put here. Here's part of the problem. You know, let me go back to this. Lay of film law. What makes my vision of the Mangum 2030 unique? And it's because it's this rural revitalization program. That's what Mangum 2030 is. It's got 5 pillars. We talked about it a little bit the other day. All the pillars, the foundation of each pillar is education. And I think I work a lot with younger kids now, and I was surprised by this, but they're actually very, very, very intelligent. They have more information. You know, I was concerned about, you know, because I'm retiring, we're retiring, right? And that generation's got to keep the economy going, otherwise, you know, it doesn't, retirement doesn't work out. But here's the thing. And so Joey here, great question. How do you plan to involve more young people in local governance? I'm not going to answer that at this point. I'll let you re-ask it in the way you want. But I think we need to really pay attention to starting teenagers and young adults, really having them involved, meaning they have to get themselves, meaning there's more. We talked about knowing more information and you get smarter. And so, you know, all of that builds upon itself. I know the reason they're asking that question. I'm not going to answer it that way, but we do need to get more young people involved in government, especially local governance. But we need it for a bigger reason than this. We need it because a lot of the issues aren't going to. So I think we're more open to being able to have a discourse than if I was having it with a 27-year-old. You know, I mean, there's a lot less knowledge base that there's a lot more knowledge base that they would naturally learn by being more involved in the system instead of idealistic concepts, which are important, but also knowing what the framework that we have to work within, what is that realistically? And right now, all basically young people do is get their news off of social media. If they were more involved in that, I think there'd be more of a buy-in, and I think there'd be more of a desire to be part of it, because then their voice would be heard, right? That they would have that feeling that I matter. You agree?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a lot of people, particularly, you know, people my age, your age, have some senses about the younger generation. I think the younger generation is going to do, you know, just fine. I really do. I'm very optimistic about the younger people that, you know, that I have seen and interacted with. It's just like anybody else. When you interact with somebody who's younger and who might not have as many facts in their head about an issue and are a little more emotional, you know, a little more emotionally attached to an issue, which is completely understandable, right?
Right.
When you start interacting with them, right, their ideas are just as good as anybody else's, you know, and they're living in a world in which, you know, all the information you could possibly want is right at their fingertips, right? You and I, it has been a slow approach to that capability, to that ability that we didn't have before, right? So I'm amazed that younger people, like any other age group, have their particular issues. And the social media thing, right? It's like anything else. You can't have too much of any one thing. You can't have too many snacks, you know, or it's not good for you. You can over exercise. That's not good for you, you know, anything. And I think the younger people are the ones who are really going to find the balance between everything online all the time and being able to discern this is what's important to me, and this is what I want to start devoting more of my focus and intention on doing. And I think they're going to figure it out and amaze everybody.
Well, they got a long way to go. I mean, because that's multi-layer as far as I think some of the issues that are happening, and as far as being able to get to a point where they're going to be okay. Why I say that is because they have to be, because the world's changing. You know, AI is here. I mean, and I know people are saying they're gonna start pushing back on it, and I think you've even said that, and it's gonna kind of not go away, but it's not moving. It's not going to be moving at the rapidity.
It's a shiny object. I mean, yeah, it's much more than that. But I mean, I think a lot of the, you know, all the hullabaloo about AI often is kind of, you know, looking in the wrong direction. There's absolutely
build that out. What do you mean?
Well, I think it seems like that's kind of one of those age divides. You know, I would guess, I don't know this for sure, but I would guess that people on the older end of the spectrum are way more concerned than younger people are concerned about it. And I think that's going to make a difference to have that balance, you know, going forward, so that there are, you know, guardrails and restrictions and cautions and warnings. And, you know, it's like so well past that we're regulating AI. I mean, it just blows my mind that there haven't been more, concrete ideas about how do we make sure that this doesn't become a very, a very destructive thing for society instead of a revolutionary freeing up of society, and
I think it's going to end up being that.
yeah. But both of those things, are going to be present, throughout. It's an ongoing concern now as it develops.
Why there haven't been as many ideas as you would expect about regulating and making sure that AI moves in a direction that is freeing up society, not enslaving it or whatever. I think it'll eventually be the freeing up of society to a great level, and that's a whole nother subject because I really have some strong beliefs on how AI is actually doing a great job. But my point being, I think that the reason that politicians or lawmakers in this, lawmakers haven't come up with more good ideas on how to do this is because I think that it's moved so fast that it just kind of came up. It's kind of like crypto went from 0 to 100 in 9.2 seconds, and I think AI has kind of done that as well. And on top of that, now that it's kind of out there and kind of really starting to be something bigger, the threat of other nations that may not be our friends, with them continuing to build, and then and if those people aren't people that follow regulations or you know what I'm saying? I mean, you could put upon yourself such a burden that you become far behind it, and it becomes something that is not freeing up you. It's the cyber wars are all over the place. This is not a way out there concept. I think that there's two things that have happened. It came on so quick, and then now you got to really be careful of what you regulate if your enemies aren't doing the same regulations, right?
Yeah, there's always been that balance. Industrial revolution, some countries.
But those things happen slowly. This is happening fast. Go on.
Much faster than any other thing. But the same basic things are true.
Absolutely.
And I think more than any other technology that I can think of, it's in the best interest of all countries to make sure that AI doesn't get out of hand, right?
I don't think China cares about that.
I could not disagree more strongly.
Of course. Well,
why? I mean, just because here's one of the reasons why I say that. Obviously, I don't agree with the political system in China. It's robbing people of freedom, opportunity, on and on and on. At the same,
hold on. That was really lightly put. That was really put in a way that made China look bad. They're also killing people and slaughtering people and enslaving people. There is that little part.
Yeah.
It's not just that they're not empowering them.
Sure.
They're slaves. The entire population is up to she what he wants to do. I didn't say she, he.
So we can disagree about the severity of everybody in China, which you don't know, I don't know. So
I've been there a lot. I know.
It clearly is not ideal for the population. Just so it's not in China or Russia or North Korea or Iran's interest to have the technological equivalent of COVID. They're not stupid.
Okay, but you're talking about two different things here.
No, I'm not.
Yeah. Let me finish my thought. So, okay, there's the COVID thing, and that's the example you use. But what I'm saying is, if the U.S. or Western countries feel that it's kind of like pollution. So we put a huge burden on ourselves to keep our pollution, or clean energy, and all that stuff. Great, we're saving the planet, but China doesn't, and underworld and poor countries don't, because their priorities is to make more money and to become a more sophisticated society. So they're not focusing on whether they're burning this kind of coal or that kind of coal, because it's more expensive and they can't afford it. Multiple reasons why. What I'm saying is, when you say you're surprised that there has not been more good ideas in how to make sure it's safe and regulated, there is a reason now, I believe, why that's kind of being slow, because now there's some concern about, well, if we put all the carbon tax on us, that hurts our economy while it's building theirs. Okay. And the same thing, using that example, same thing in the the AI kind of world, like Japan built amazing robots. They're gonna be the ones that are gonna be out there, supplying that in the market. I don't know if you've seen the newest generations, but they're like humans walking around, cyber humans. But at the end of the day, you also have to compete, it just in general sense, but also to keep the safety of your sovereign nation as well. So if you overregulate yourself while they're not, then you're putting yourself at a very big disadvantage. Would you agree with at least that?
Yes, but you also put yourself in a long-term disadvantage by not doing those things.
Okay, justify that statement.
What do you mean justified?
How are
Explain.
you putting yourself in a long-term? No, what I'm saying is,
let me give you a probably somewhat contentious area is the whole notion of climate change. Right now, some people don't think it's as big a deal, or that it's a natural cycle and we'll come out of it. I don't want to argue that at all. It's just that if the temperature is warming.
Oh, no, hold on. What's his name? Who was the vice president that started
Al Gore.
warming?
Al Gore.
He's now saying that the planet is cooling.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he is.
Anyway,
watch
let's
his
not get into
watch
the
his
point.
interview yesterday. Go ahead.
That's anyway.
It's called like global freezing again.
No, he's not. But anyway, the example is that if there's something like that, and I think it's it's pretty universally understood that however it started, whatever is a driving cause, if the planet keeps getting warmer, it's going to be bad for the entire planet, not just and to get back to this other idea, people in China and Russia and North Korea and Iran, they understand this too, because China has agreed, now whether we can trust them, I don't know, but they have agreed to do some pretty dramatic lowering of fossil fuels. It actually is happening. Of course, they don't want to give up their competitive edge, and if push comes to shove, maybe they would, forget all of that. But it's in the interest of, everybody to ensure that things like the temperature getting too much higher and AI getting too powerful, that we figure this thing out, and it's going to take, a global effort to ensure that it is going to be equitable to everybody. And then, you're free to run things how you want to, right? I mean, It'd be like, you know, we don't want anybody telling us we need to do this, that, and the other thing, you know, because it's better for the whole world, right? It's the same in every other country.
Well, I don't know. I think that's been kind of the thing that has led, you know, the decisions of world leaders is we are all that, you know, specifically the Western nations. We are all that. Yeah. And so we have to take on all this responsibility because it's better for the world. And when a third of the world isn't, I don't know what the real number is, but you know what I mean. If they get us to be able to bear that burden, one, they don't have that burden, and two, they have a distinct advantage or a bit more of an advantage, whatever that is, because we're encumbered more. And that's the balance that you're talking about. It has to be brought on by the world. The whole world needs to see that. And that's the important part right there is making sure the whole world is, and that, let's say the Western countries or nations or whatever, they actually act that way. Hold on, guys, you're not participating. Well, back up. That has to change. And so there has to be more of that expectation of others, not just us. And that's, I think, something that's important in what you're saying. Because I mean, you can't disagree with what you said. It has to be a whole world thing. The reality of whether it is or not is the part that's on the table to discuss and needs to be focused and adjusted accordingly. And yes, we can't warn the world and expect that if that's the case, we can't warn the world or freeze it and expect that there could be no negative consequences on that. So the bigger issue to me, because I don't see anything like happening next year or anything, the biggest issue to me is to really start putting the pressure on these ones that aren't, that they must do. And there's different ways to do that. I mean, we punish each country punishes the other in some way or the other all the time. So that's nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that. That's a disappointment to me.
I think it's you know, pretty well understood that you know, there are always going to be you know, countries, ideology, politics, economics, you know, all of that stuff that isn't going to be in the best interest of everybody on the planet. Right? I mean, it's always good. But the idea that we can't do what we can do because the other countries aren't doing it is just, I just don't think that can be the focus, you know.
Oh, I think it has to be the focus. But it's the other way around. You said it backwards to what I said. It isn't that we can't do because the other people aren't. That is kind of the discussion today. But what I said was what we need to do is we need to tell them they need to be responsible to do it. It needs to be a unified pressure, and then we can address that issue. That's we were kind of beating this thing to in a dead horse. We're beating a dead horse here. But I mean, I think we pulled a lot. We pulled a lot from that. And I think it's important that we have those discussions. And again, it goes back to leadership. To me, we need better leaders across the board, and people that are focused on this kind of conversation, because there is a real danger either way that happens. If we overregulate, that's a danger. If we underregulate, that's a danger. And a lot of those decisions are affected by or get affected by others that may or may not be doing that. And again, everything in my desire to start the show, the basic premise is there should not be one decision coming out of Congress, the Senate, the administration that answers this question. Now, there's a lot of other things that are going on with whatever that bill or whatever that decision is. But at the end of the day, for this country anyway, we have to, there should be nothing that gets approved or presented or done that isn't at the number one thing that it has to do good for the American people. Now, that may be the actions in the Soviet Union, that may be actions in China, that may be actions in the Ukraine, that may be actions in, at the end of the day, the overall premise has to be, is this good for the American people? Now, we can't do that now because, one, we don't have leaders that are willing to actually think about their job that way. And two, they're always trying to win one way or the other. So, we're not going to have that thought process. But when our founding fathers said, come in from the fields, come in from your business, come in from your doctor's practice, come in from, whatever, and serve the country that has brought you the prosperity that it has. That approach, that thinking, that logic would then hire people, because we'd let them go the next term if they didn't. And yeah, there's term limits, stuff, that discussion. Term limits are already here. Vote them in or vote them out. It's all these decisions we put in their hands. And right now we need people that want those decisions coming of the people, for the people, by the people. And that's the most important thing that any administration, any politician, lawmaker, any lawmaker should ever have is it the best thing as a general? And yes, not everybody's going to be happy with every decision, but at the end of the day, if we're doing that because it's indirectly or directly empowering the great middle class, that shouldn't be out there. And so now you got to define what that actually is, and who's defining it? The people that are in there. So if we don't like what they're doing, we bring them out and solve so many freaking problems. Let me ask you this. Jeffrey Bowman asked me here. We're at 2 hours now, dude. What challenges do you expect in this election? Communication for me. Oh, you're out. All right, he's out. I think this is a good question because the challenge is to be able to get my word out on these things that you've seen. This Mangum 2030. This is an important rural regeneration initiative. That right there is a big reason I'm running now. We already talked about that. But at the end of the day, I've got the, I'm a columnist in the Mangum Star, and I do this show and I do Substacks 3 days a week. So I'm doing everything I can. I'm not running a typical election, as you can tell. I do want to get a billboard, and I do want to knock on doors and talk to people face to face. I do want to get to that point, but that's the hardest thing right now, is just being able to bring the word, the communication of what, and then convincing them, because they're not to the point right now. I'm not going to win anybody's vote if they don't think I'm doing what's right for them, meaning the city, right? You agree?
Yes, if I was a voter in Mangum and you were proposing things that I didn't think worked, yeah, I wouldn't vote for you.
Right. And more so even than that. Let's say it's another way. There's 3 people running for this position, okay? 2 of them moved here from California. I moved from Illinois, but before that, I lived in California. The other one's born and raised here. So the person born and raised here already knows a lot of people, and their ideas may or may not be good. I don't know. I don't know really what his thing is about. Tried to get him on the show. I haven't got him on the show at this point, or even got a response from him. But then they throw up a couple signs on the main streets, and that's pretty much it. Here's the thing. We vote too much. Now, I just said all the media that I run out, but what if I'm a bad person or a bad ideas. I express what my ideas are, but what if you're just voting on somebody because you heard their name before or you saw a commercial, and that's kind of what we do now. And mainly that they're in our party. I'm voting all red or all blue. I don't know if that's the right way to put that. I don't know if blue's over here or red's over here. But the biggest issue is always communication. We're going back right to communication, but it's also about finding out what that communication actually is. And that's been a real, I think, Achilles heel for our citizenship in the world, really. I mean, everybody's kind of going through all sorts of stuff, right? That's been a problem.
Yeah. I think that's the most destructive aspect of the polarization is that people don't trust the information, regardless of whether it's objectively proven.
Hold on. Let me jump in right there. Just let me stick this in there. You talked about AI. That's making it even harder because you can make fake shit look real. So I agree.
Yeah, but you can do it at scale now, which is a little bit different. But it's the same thing. You could be the most trusted person in the world and use it to con people, right? So that's always been the issue. But that's the idea that we don't even trust.
I think it's worse than that, Baron. I think it's worse.
The news sources.
I'm not talking about a person conning them. I'm talking about voters that are proud to do their vote. They get their little sticker. I voted. And when they go into that booth, okay, recognize his name. I've heard that somewhere. I saw a commercial in that one. Yeah, I'm going to do that one. And on down the ticket.
Yeah.
And so it's not. I would much more appreciate it if somebody actually checked it out and then was conned.
Yeah.
Okay, because it was just a bad person. But that's not even. It's so easy to con people now because they don't. You just throw them in office, and they're proud that they're voting. Producer Barbie said one time very early on, and I didn't agree with her at first. I said, come on. But she said, in order to vote, you should have to kind of take some sort of but just what that responsibility is. And when I first said that, I said, you're never going to be able to do it. But, more I think about it, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, there's that delicate balance between, voting being a right and a privilege. It's both. So, right. Yeah, whether or not, I personally think it would be a good idea. I don't think it would ever fly.
Right.
But I think you should just, when you're getting a driver's license, you gotta show that you have to demonstrate that you understand enough to know how to drive. Seems to me that that's the minimum you could ask for people who are wanting to vote. Is it, and I don't know how
that's the exact example.
You have to have some idea of what the issues are and what the solutions that different people are proposing, so that it gets away from just this instinctual, this is my party, or I like the way that person looks, or I like their videos, or whatever. I've heard more about them than anybody else. It's just,
they spent the most money on the election.
It's a crazy way to elect the best leaders.
It's a harmful way. And it's yeah, absolutely.
Well, things get done, and things get better, things get worse. I think, overall, we've been on a general upswing since our inception, right? To create a more perfect union. I think we're still on track for that. You can't take any 5-year period, no matter who's in office, and go, oh, the country's just coming apart at the seams, and we got to stop this in its tracks. History is way more forgiving than that. So
I think,
anyway.
Aaron, if you look at it over 3,000 years, governments have been around. So society had been around for millennia, right? And if you look at that trajectory, then yeah, I got to agree with you. But I think that my belief that the great middle class at this point in time saw its best times, most powerful, most influential, most everything, most happy in the 50s. I think that since then, if you look at how now that's not everything, because I mean, let's face it, racism is, yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways we're way better than we were in that. But as far as the influence and the being able to buy a house and drive a car and have it, you know, you live your life as you wanted, and not have the government interfere. I think that's way worse now than it was in the 50s. As I frame it that way.
Yeah. Certain economic issues, like the income inequality, the power of labor, the power of workers, the power of the middle class has clearly declined for several decades.
Yeah. Hey, before we get too far away from this, because Rick asked this before when we were talking about transparency and being, you know, all that. Would you ask this question? What do you think what Rick's saying here? What are your thoughts? Do you want to build? I've got about 3 more questions. One just popped up now, so there may be more coming, but I'd like to kind of focus on these and really get into that part of, continuing that part of the discussion. You said earlier on, when we were in the green room, you said, we may track off on some other subjects. Yeah. Well, we've done that.
And then some, yeah.
And then some.
Yeah, and actually, do you have a sense of how much longer we're going? Because we're already past.
We're almost 2 hours, 15 minutes. I'd love to run through these really quick and give you a kiss on the forehead. Goodbye.
Responses. Yeah. I appreciate that the concern about transparency. How do you ensure it? I don't. That's not a hard and fast answer to how you ensure it, unless he's talking about you specifically.
He is.
How would you personally ensure that you're being transparent? I think you're already doing it to a degree, right? You're putting yourself out there as a person who believes X, Y, and Z. So it's probably going to be pretty obvious if you start, falling away from that. And then, if you ever got elected, then your constituents would tell you, hey, Rodd, you said you were going to do this and you're not. Wake up. Smack head.
I'll even take that a little deeper and where I think he's going with this.
Not too much deeper, because we need to kind of wrap this up a little bit. So don't go too deep.
No. What I mean is the question what he's asking. Yeah. So ensuring transparency means, okay, you do all these things now. How are you going to ensure that you need to convince me that you're going to be transparent once you're elected? And that's one of the concerns always of people. And I can say this, and again, I'm saying ensuring, am I fooling you or not? But my intention is to continue this show after the election, assuming I win. Either way, actually, right? Well, if I don't win, I'm not doing the show anymore.
Can't set this guy up.
The bottom line is that if I plan on talking about why the decisions that are made, not things I can't talk about, but everything else on this show, at least every Friday. I already meet with people in the street. I already have people that come up into the library to sit and chat with me. That's my personality. That's how I can ensure it. How did your experience as host? Oh, I didn't even realize. Okay, that leads in really well. Prepare you for this role. In my opinion, As host here, well, actually, Darren, you're the host.
Yeah.
What? Go ahead.
The listening.
Yeah, exactly. And being able to build that curiosity to where what you say matters to me, because I'm used to it. It's my life. It's how the show works. I mean, you can see how I operate in this leadership, these questions, because this is how I live my life. And I listen, I talk, I ask questions. I'm curious. I think that's the important part for the answer of Olivia here. Thank you. Nice, pretty girl. Sorry, young lady. Very good question, Olivia. I appreciate that. Same with Rick on the last one. What does real community engagement look like to you? Well, I gave an example. The first election I did, I was actually one of the commissioners and the mayor, and they were running against people. And during that election, which I just come here and we did our first show and people were starting to learn, but we didn't have 13 voices of Mangum and there was this and that. There was 10% of the town, the elected, the people allowed to vote, 10% voted in that election. I have the numbers. And about 3 months later was the school board election. Now, these are different things, but they're both critical. 32.7% of the electorate voted in that election. So to me, if those numbers continue to grow, I mean, I'd love to have 50% of the people in Mangum voting for their next commissioner, their next, that June 16th election is going to be a big one. I'd like to see, to me, that would say there's civic engagement. There's engagement here. That's what it looks like to me. That's just one marker, but that's an important one, I think. Yeah. Then we got a big one here. Why don't you read this? I think this is the sheriff of Greer County.
Sure.
Go ahead.
One of the biggest obstacles in this country specifically is lack of sales.
County.
Huh? Oh, sorry.
In
this county.
Remember, we're small little town out here. Hey, we're small.
The whole country.
Yeah. No, but I think this is actually the sheriff.
In this county, in Mangum County specifically, is a lack of sales tax. What ideas would you bring to the table to try to bring in more business and public service or utility tax? Yeah, you talked about that a bit as one of the key things that you think needs to happen in a town like Mangum to be able, and any
critically important,
small or big, expanding the economic self-sustainability of any community is going to be a positive thing.
And sir, thank you for that question. And I think there's two opposites of the same problem. I think in big cities, overspending is a problem. In little cities like ourselves, not having money to spend is the problem. And so I love this question, and not because I'm running. It's a great setup, but it's so critically important. And that's one of the 5 pillars that I have in the Mangum 2030 project. The very first pillar addresses this question right here. So somebody has always said to me, hey, you know what? Well, they say in general, we need to get a company in here. But then the problem is then we get jobs and sales and so forth and so on. And there are more businesses in the last couple of months, interestingly enough, that have actually kind of moved into town or are starting businesses in town. But it's very difficult to be able to have a big company of some sort come in, because you're going to have to build the infrastructure for them. Say it's a brick and mortar company. You're going to have to build the infrastructure for them. And then they're going to want, big, huge tax breaks. What do you got to offer me, Mangum? I'm bringing all that, it's the negotiation deal, the art of the deal, right? Sorry, I had to throw that in. And then what people go, that's a big kill because we can't. What comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? You know that term. Well, you know what? We live in a different world today. sir. And in that world, you talked about it's really elevated more since COVID, in that there's a lot more digital economy. I am working with companies right now that specialize in having remote employees. You know, accounting services don't have to be done face to face, and really they aren't. But you go on down the line. I know a kid here that's just graduated high school. I bring it up because my son did the same thing. He's 40 now, so just do the math. But he has a YouTube channel, and he makes between $4,000 and $10,000 a month on that channel. Now, is everybody going to run a YouTube channel? No, but there's a lot of companies that will hire, like a marketing company out of Dallas, remote work, and on and on and on. But we don't have that structure set up. So, sir, what I would say is we can easily bring in companies. And by the way, the police chief asked me the same question similar question during the rattlesnake derby. How are we going to we need to get businesses in here. How can we do that? We can do it, guys. That's where I'm talking about. We need as a city, as an area, we need to get our agency back and go, we can do this. And we can, because we don't have to bring a brick and mortar. That's the industrial revolution. Let's work off this next revolution and start promoting. We only need 5, 10, 20 different opportunities to start to increase the sales tax. If we get 20 jobs in the next 2 years, or next year, and that literally will bring in sales tax into the city of roughly $500,000. It's in my 20. It's in that program. I've done all the research, and that research is what brought me. I told you, Barbie and I, we did some studies, and we did some numbers, and we crunched this and we crunched that. Damn if it, and there were a couple cities that along the border here that I thought that those kind of things could be achieved. But Mangum had a different feel. When I came into this town, this city, I said, the vibe. You know the vibe. You know what I'm talking about, the vibe there. This town has that vibe. What it needs now is it just needs to be able to change the lens and come down this road that you're asking about here right now. Come down this road with some additional ideas. We don't have to build brick and mortars, but you know what'll happen? Let's say we add 500,000 more into a year to the city, and sales tax and publics and people going to restaurants eating, right?
$500,000?
$500,000. Yeah.
Oh. Okay, I thought you meant people.
Oh, no. No, I don't think I didn't say that, sir. He said it. Nobody in this town wants it to change to be 500,000 people.
Yeah.
And that's been part of the issue in that you have the old guard that wants to keep everything the same.
Yeah. And
then you have the younger people that are like, can't survive with it being the same. But there's people here that have money and they just want to keep on doing it. That's another challenge that we never got into. But anyway, so I think, and I'd love to chat with you more. And as a matter of fact, you're going to be on, I think it's the 8th, isn't it? Next week.
13th.
Right. No, not, I'm sorry. The sheriff is. He's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks. And so let's talk about that more. And Baron, that's it. That's the last question that I have here. Do you have any other questions or things that you want to bring up? Otherwise, I'll do my closing monologue. And we are at 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah. I actually need to get on with some things. I got something coming in.
See why I asked you if you had a hard stop. This shit happens sometimes. I'm sorry. I appreciate it. Any closing remarks, though?
No.
Well, give everybody a big wave, and I'll do my close, and I'll meet you in the green room for a quick howdy. Deal?
Okay. Yeah. I got to take care of something, but I'll stay in the room till I get back with you.
All right.
Okay.
I'll throw you in there. I'll be there in about a minute and a half. Okay.
Okay. Good.
All right, brother.
Yeah.
Give everybody a
Have
big
me
wave.
on. Very,
time.
very enlightening conversation. Thank you, my man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. See ya. All right. Now, so now you've seen it, right? I mean, it wasn't a speech, right? This is the thing. This is what we need to kind of, it's not a rollout, right? It's not something scripted and packaged up. It's just a conversation. This is what we need, that conversation. And I'll tell you something about this. Sitting on this side of the table, it feels a little different. Because, and actually towards the end, I couldn't handle myself. I had to jump in and kind of jump on some things. But because when you're the one being asked the questions, right? You don't get to hide behind the ideas. You have to stand on them. And after the last 20 months, listening to people across this town and, my God, across this nation, through the 13 voices of Mangum, through voices at the table, these are some of the reasons I'm running. Through the work around the Mangum 2030 Rural Revitalization Initiative. Here's what I've come to really understand. This town doesn't need more noise. It needs alignment. It needs people willing to sit down like this, listen like this, and then actually step into responsibility. And that's the part that really does matter. Because there's a difference between being part of the conversation and being accountable for what happens next. So today, this wasn't about convincing you of anything. It was about showing you how I think, what I've learned, and why I believe I can make a positive impact as city commissioner here in Mangum. You may agree with it, you may not. That's okay. That's actually how this is supposed to work, right? But what I would ask of anyone watching this, don't just take this one conversation and run with it, okay? Watch others. Watch the people who sat in this chair. Watch how this town has been talking to itself over time. Because if we get this right, if we keep showing up, if we keep having real conversations, then maybe we actually move something forward. Not all at once, but piece by piece. One conversation at a time. As I love to say so often, I'm Rodd Duff. I'm your host. We'll see you on the next one, and I'm out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.